So I mentioned earlier that we consider ourselves essential. I think Jesus, he planted this church and the church here on the earth to spread through the world, to make disciples. And that's our job, to spread the gospel, which means the good news. Thank you. And it's so important. It's so important that we get the word out, not just keep it to ourselves. So many times, you know, when you get fixed up and you're all good, you're on your feet, you know, you just go on your life and stuff. But you know, we have a calling and a purpose, and it's to get the word out and get the message of the hope that we have in Jesus out. It's not to be successful in this world, although that's something that comes with being a servant of God. It may come with it because he wants us to work doing something with our own hands, so we'll have something to share with those in need. He doesn't want us to be the ones in need, and so he needs his servants to be taken care of. First, let's just turn to Matthew 28:18, and this is kind of the commission. Jesus is getting ready to go up into the skies. He's been resurrected from the dead. He's been hanging around with his disciples for a good amount of time, and showing himself to various disciples and stuff. And then he's getting ready to go, and he says, "All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." So there it is. He said, "Therefore, go home and sit down and don't do nothing." No, he didn't. He said, "Go." He said, "Get up, go into all the world and make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son, and teaching them to obey everything," not just a few things, but everything that I have commanded you. And then I like this, "And surely," I mean, you can believe this, you can trust on this, you can depend on this. He is with you. He's not going to leave you. I used to say, "Oh Lord, be with me," forgetting that he's already with me. "Lord, be with us as we do this." Well, he's with us. You don't really have to say that. You can just know that he's with you. So this is our calling. This is what we're supposed to be doing, making disciples. I love this church. I love the way that we are trying to do that and helping guys. I was the same way myself. I gotta say that I was raised in the church system, and I went to Sunday school and I knew the little stories and stuff, but I didn't have any roots, and I didn't have a example. My parents would live one way in the world, and then they would come to church and be a different way. And I don't know, that was my experience. And so it was kind of hard for me to, you know, as soon as trials and school and peer pressure and all that stuff happened to me, I just went with the crowd. And I really paid dearly, but I knew of the truth of Jesus Christ, but I hadn't been walking in it. And I got messed up with methamphetamines, and I was hopeless. I couldn't nobody wanted me. I felt like I had some skills and I had some knowledge, but I was wrecked. I was ruined, and I didn't fit in anywhere. And I was just like a wandering, I was just a fraction of a man. I don't know, I was nothing. And I was losing everything. I was losing my wife, I was losing my stepkids, I was losing it all. And I came to my brother and sister-in-laws, and I had been to this church twice. And there was a tent back here, and I'd been there, and I knew they had a God's Ranch program for the girls, and I was trying to get my wife fixed. I figured if I could get my wife fixed, I'd be okay. It's all her fault. But what I soon discovered is that I need to get myself fixed, because I'm the head of the family. That's the way it works. The man is the head of the household. I didn't say this, God said this. So I'm sorry, I'm not trying to offend any ladies. Ladies have a place, and ladies are so important. And somebody said earlier, the man's the the head, but the woman is the neck. So what does she do? She turns the head. That's powerful. That's important. But nice save. So anyway, bottom line is, I was ruined. My wife was a mess. I got myself fixed up because I went into set free. We didn't have a men's home here at this church, but I went in set free, and it was kind of chaotic. I gotta say, there was a whole nother level of craziness going on. There was power struggles. There was revolving doors. There was bad attitudes. There was all kinds of things. But I said to myself, I'm not here. And people were leaving because of the drama and whatnot. And I was like, I'm here to get right with God. I don't care what's going on. And so that's what I did. I focused in on getting well, and seeking God out, no matter what is going on. And so I just did that. And I even got kicked out at one point, but I didn't want to get kicked out. But they roll up and go. It's like, where am I supposed to go? So I went in and I sat on my bag and made a phone call to my brother-in-law, and I said, I'm not moving. I got kicked out, and I don't want to be kicked out, and I'm sorry that I had a bad attitude. And I did. I had a bad attitude. There was a guy preaching, and I didn't agree with what he was preaching. And so I was pacing in the back of the church. Good job. Like a dummy. And I remember I wrote him a letter or something. I gave it to him afterwards, and then the pastor, Kenny's wife, ousted me because she was angry at me for that. But I've come a long ways. I've sat through many preachings that I didn't agree with, and I haven't done that. And I've also said many a stupid thing, and put my foot in my mouth, and because of ignorance or whatever, because I'm recognizing that I'm not a perfect vessel. God's still working on me. But I have become patient. I have become a little different. I don't fly off the handle, and I'm not a hothead anymore. And God is still using me, I guess. And so we are going to keep pushing forward with Him. We don't have an option, really. What's the other option? Quitting? Yeah. What kind of option is that? There's no hope in quitting. Let me turn you to John 6. Jesus once, he had a whole bunch of disciples. And he gets into this discourse. I mean, here's what happened. He just fed a bunch of people with all this 4,000 or 5,000 people, right? And he just, with bread and fish, and he made it, and he fed a huge crowd. It was a mighty miracle. And then he went across a lake that night, and this crowd showed up again. And they didn't go because of the miracle, they just wanted some food. It's like, man, he's passing out food again. And so he went into this long discourse about the bread of life and Moses and the manna and everything, and kind of trying to explain that he is that bread of life. And you need to eat him. And you need to be part of what he's got going on. And see the big picture. And boy, it was some hard teaching for them, because they were saying, what? You got to eat your body, eat your flesh, and drink your blood. And they started bailing on Jesus. They started leaving. Verse 41. At this, the Jews began to grumble about him because he said that. I'm the bread that came down from heaven. And they said, is this not Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How can he now say, I came down from heaven? Am I in the right place?
Yep.
You're in church.
Stop grumbling among yourselves, Jesus answered. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up at the last day. It is written in the prophets. And they said, it's written in the prophets, will they not all be taught by God? Everyone who listens to the Father and learns from him comes to me. No one has seen the Father except the one who is from God. Only he has seen the Father. I tell you the truth. He who believes has everlasting life. I am the bread of life. Your forefathers ate the manna in the desert, yet they died. But here is the bread that comes down from heaven, which a man may eat and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats this bread, he will live forever. This bread is my flesh, which I give for the life of the world. Then the Jews began to argue sharply amongst themselves, and how can this man give us his flesh to eat? And Jesus said, I tell you the truth, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you.
That's right.
Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. For my flesh is real food, and my blood is real drink. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood remains in me, and I in him. Just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so the one who feeds on me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven. Your forefathers ate manna and died. But he who feeds on this bread will live forever.
Yes, thank you, Lord.
Woo! You know, we kind of symbolize this as when we're going to do this, you know, this is my body, which is broken for you, which we're going to do later today. And this juice represents the blood that was poured out for you. Whew. He said this while teaching in the synagogue in Capernaum. And on hearing this, many of his disciples said, this is a hard teaching. Who can accept it? And I probably didn't say it like that. Aware that his disciples were grumbling about this, Jesus said to them, does this offend you? What if you see the Son of Man ascend to where he was before? The Spirit gives life. The flesh counts for nothing. Wow, did you hear that? the flesh counts for nothing. Nada. Zip. But we tend to put all importance on the flesh, right? Oh, it hurts. Oh, yeah. I want. I gotta have. Our flesh is controlling us. And it's not supposed to be that way. Our flesh amounts to nothing.
Right.
It's gonna be dust. It's gonna, when it dies, it dries up and it turns into a little bit of powder, a little dust. It's nothing. It's the spirit that matters. And the spirit that we starve because we don't feed it. Because we're so busy feeding our stomachs. We're so busy feeding our muscles. We're so busy feeding our eyes. But we need to feed our spiritual life. And feed on God's Word, on Jesus. Jesus knew from the beginning which of them did not believe and who would betray him. And he went on to say, "This is why I told you that no one could come to me unless the Father has enabled him." From this time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him.
Oh.
That there's a sad moment, right? Man, when I was watching the Chosen show, man, it just broke my heart because Nicodemus, because Jesus called Nicodemus and he said, "Come and follow me, Nick. And we'll be waiting we'll meet at the well. And we're leaving at such and such a time." And Nicodemus is like, "Oh man, I got so much going on. I got this prestige. I got all these credentials. I'm like the number one teacher in all of the land." And he had an opportunity to follow Jesus. And he went to the well in the show. And he's like around the corner and he's like peeking. And Jesus knows he's there. And you can just see the tug on his heart. And your heart's just breaking because he leaves a sack of money there for them to pay for their expenses, and then he goes back kind of crying because he couldn't do it, but he wanted to. You know, Jesus wants us to follow him. Count the cost. It's not like the enemy tells us. The enemy says, he doesn't tell us what it's going to cost us. You know, the drug lord, he doesn't tell you what it's going to cost you. He isn't going to say it's going to cost you your family, it's going to cost you your kids, it's going to cost you your job, it's going to cost you your health, your teeth are going to fall out, you know, your heart's going to be hard. They don't tell you that. Jesus, he's straight up. He tells you what it's going to cost you. And it's not an easy thing. It's going to cost you your life. Your whole life. But what is it worth? What is a man's life worth if we're just a bunch of dust in the end? If we don't have anything eternal to live for? What's it worth?
Right.
Turn to Mark 8:34. Mark 8:34. Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples, and he said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it." You hear that? Whoever loses their life for Jesus and his gospel, they're going to save their life in the end. Now, I got to say, that doesn't mean necessarily death, but it could mean that. It could mean, I had dreams of being an astronaut. But I'm giving those up because I'm going to follow Jesus. So you're kind of losing your life and your dreams and your ambitions and what you wanted to do, to go do what God wants you to do, because He has a design for you and a purpose for you better than what our hopes and our desires want. Now that is an example of losing your life, or it's not physical death, but it's still, when you're living for Jesus, you're not living for your own ambitions. You're living for His kingdom and serving Him. And you know what? He's got a better thing in store for you, I believe.
Yes.
I think it's so exciting. You don't ever know what's going on. Trust in Jesus. He's leading the way. He's got some things for us that we can't even imagine because we're too afraid to step after Him in faith and follow after Him. It's because we always want to see where we're going. We want to see the next step. We want to see what's up around the corner. But Jesus just wants us to stay with Him. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? What good is it? I mean, that's a big gain. You could gain the whole world, conquer that thing, discover everything in the world, and you do it in like 70, 80, 90 years' time, and then you're dead. What good? It all amounted to nothing. It all went to the next person. No memory of you. No you. No you. You're gone. Losing your soul. Soul is a very precious thing. We are created in God's image. I believe that we're created threefold beings. Body, soul, and spirit. It's like God is God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. We are three in one. Our flesh is just a vehicle for our spirit and our soul. And when the one goes, the other one is there in the front, carrying on. We have evidence from Jesus' resurrection. And not only did he, it was undisputed, that Lazarus raised from the dead and came back to life after he was stinking and rotten in the grave. He stunk. Oh, you can't go in there. It's rank. Decomp. That's bad. Even with all the spices they put on you. But Lazarus got right up and walked out of there. And man, what a picture. What a picture. There is life in Jesus Christ, and there's no life in anywhere else. Let's finish up this Mark verse here. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? That's another question that we can't answer. If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. Wow. So, I think our hope is to have, when he comes, who's like, well done, my good and faithful servant. Right? I am ashamed of you. No, we don't want that.
No.
Wow, that's going to hurt. That's going to be hard. That's going to be heavy. Let's make him proud. Let's get after what he's got going on. Let's get his word out. It's not for us to, for us to get it out there, but it's not, we can't make up somebody's decision. We can't make somebody make up their mind, but it's up to us to get them the word so they can have an opportunity to say yes or no. We just got to give them that opportunity. You know, the word of our testimony. Eric had a great testimony today. He was paying back for what he done wrong, for some bill he had, and he was saying why. And this lady was going, whoa, people don't do this.
Yeah.
But Eric did.
That's right.
Because he knows the right thing to do. And so that is a great testimony right there. And so we want to make him proud. We need to work as hard as we can. It's coming to a close. World's changing awful fast. World's changing awful fast. There's forces at play that are trying to get a one world organization. I don't know how that's going to work out. We can't ever see that or speculate. But all we can do is pray, make disciples, pray for people to come out of that system, pray for people to come to Christ, to forsake the sinful ways, and to live for Him, to choose life
Yes.
and not to choose death.